Every 4 months, I make a video like this, and it's actually one of my favorite videos to make because I like to go back to see how often I hit on these videos and how often I miss on these videos. So for those of you guys that have seen this type of video before, what we're going to be doing is discussing multiple players that are about to be traded. Now, here's the thing. Not necessarily every person on this list is going to be traded. A lot of times, whenever trade discussions are held, there needs to be a lot that goes right in order for a player to get traded. But these are players that could potentially be offered up in deals that you could potentially see switch teams over the offseason, and we're going to be providing you a rationale as to why. Now, of course, if I happen to miss any players, make sure you let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll make sure to include them in our next video. On top of that, before we get to the content, I want to let you guys know we're giving away 2 next-gen consoles. One is if you subscribe and turn on our notifications on this channel, you'll enter for a chance to win a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. We're going to announce the winner of that giveaway in the beginning of August, and of course, we're going to be giving away a next-gen console to anyone that subscribes and turns on our notifications on the Laced Up podcast. We're announcing the winner to that once we get to 40,000 subscribers. Now that we get all of that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Let's start with our very first player of this list. The first player on this list is none other than Mr. Bradley Beal. Now, there's a lot that needs to go right in order for Bradley Beal to get traded. One, he needs to come out and demand a trade. He needs to say that he doesn't want to continue forward with the Washington Wizards, with Russell Westbrook, and he'd have to pretty much come out and demand the trade. But the thing is, it's in the Washington Wizards' best interest to trade Bradley Beal at this time. Yes, Bradley Beal did sign a contract extension, and the very first year of his contract extension is set to kick in at the beginning of the 2021 to 2022 season, where he is set to make $34 million. Then after that, he has a player option for $37 million should he decide to opt in for the 2022 to 2023 season. So technically, this could be Bradley Beal's final season on the Washington Wizards, and if he's unhappy with the team, then he could demand a trade, and it's in the Wizards' best interest to grant him that trade. I think this is one of those situations where the Wizards need to blow it up and focus on developing their young stars, like seeing what they have in Denny Avdia, seeing what they could get out of Rui Hachimura. I like what Russell Westbrook and Daniel Gafford had going for themselves last year, so there are some good pieces in place, but I don't think this is a team that can necessarily contend when you're building around Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. And if Bradley Beal is going to get traded, then, well, you could potentially expect Russell Westbrook to get traded as well, because if they're going to trade one of these players, chances are they're going to blow the whole thing up, just like the Houston Rockets did with James Harden and Russell Westbrook last year. Westbrook has a very similar contract to Chris Paul, where after the 2022 season, he can opt out and elect not to make $47 million, and it's in his best interest to get into a situation where he is the missing piece of a championship, very similarly to what Chris Paul did with the Phoenix Suns, and then potentially he could opt out of his 2022 to 2023 contract and maybe do what Chris Paul's about to do, which is sign a 3-year, $100 million contract. That's a very big if. Not a lot of people can navigate their careers the same way that Chris Paul did, but I'm thinking that this is more of a 1A and a 1B. If Bradley Beal gets traded, I'm expecting Russell Westbrook to get traded. If neither of them get traded, then I expect both of them to stay. But at this point, you have so much value on your team. You have a decent amount of young pieces on your team. You could get tremendous assets in return for Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, and just Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook defensively isn't doing it for the Washington Wizards. They are not a threat in the Eastern Conference with these 2-star players on their team. You might as well trade them and get a significant amount of assets in return, especially for Russell Westbrook, because he's about to go on his age 32 season and he could begin to show signs of a decline at any point. Up next, we have Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo Ball is technically a restricted free agent this offseason, so a myriad of things could happen to him. him. He could either have his rights removed or let go of by the New Orleans Pelicans, or he could sign a big contract elsewhere and the New Orleans Pelicans could elect to match, or the Pelicans could sign and trade him elsewhere. But needless to say, I felt like it was worth including Lonzo Ball in this list because we all know that his daddy LeVar Ball would love to see him go to a large market. There have been reports that the New York Knicks are very interested in Lonzo Ball and Leon Rose would do anything it takes to get him, but I honestly think that the New York Knicks are more focused on having an upgrade at the point guard position. Needless to say, unfortunately for Lonzo Ball, he's the type of person that's always going to find himself in trade rumors no matter what, and it's been that way ever since his second year in the league. Up next, this is another one of those A-B situations. I think one or the other one of these players is going to get traded, and that's either Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum. The thing is, technically speaking, there is no way that Damian Lillard could leave the Portland Trailblazers unless if they elect to trade him. His contract extension literally kicks in this year, and he's supposed to stay on the Portland Trailblazers until he's 35 years old. And of course, the fact that we saw this picture and LeBron James at an LA Sparks game really didn't do the media world any favors. People started blowing smoke into this rumor ever since they saw each other at a Sparks game. There was this one image taken that was even more cryptic because you could only see the back of LeBron James's head, and of course, the media is going to take that and run away with it. But speaking as a very realistic Laker fan, and of course, the realistic Laker fan being the guy that speaks and makes these videos and not the guy that makes these thumbnails, I don't think there's a way, shape, or form that the Lakers could get Damian Lillard. I don't think there is any trade package that is conceivable that the Lakers could offer to the Portland Trailblazers for Damian Lillard. It's something that is not even existing in my head. If Damian Lillard does leave, it's going to be as a result of the Portland Trailblazers doing a huge kindness on his part, and maybe he'll find himself on a team like the Knicks, or maybe, just maybe, if somehow, some way Daryl Morey could pull off this Houdini after Ben Simmons' trade value hit an all-time low, maybe he could get traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. But I think all of those are long shots, especially if Damian Lillard has just signed a huge contract extension to stay with the Portland Trailblazers. I don't see him leaving, which brings me to my B candidate in this instance, which is CJ McCollum. There is a huge chance that CJ McCollum gets traded this offseason, mainly because that's probably the Portland Trailblazers' best piece to upgrade the roster around Damian Lillard. So I'm expecting these two to be split up next year. I think either one of them or the other is going to get traded. Most likely, I think CJ McCollum is going to get traded because they really did their best to build around McCollum and Damian Lillard, and that's their best chance to get another piece. Up next, we have the unicorn Kristaps Porzingis, who hasn't really had the best go of it ever since joining the Dallas Mavericks. We've made countless videos on the fact that Kristaps Porzingis isn't necessarily happy with his role on the Dallas Mavericks. He doesn't like being Luka Doncic's Robin when he used to play Batman on the New York Knicks. And the interesting thing about all this is the perception of Kristaps Porzingis has changed drastically, but his numbers across the board are either the same or even better than when he was a member of the New York Knicks. Every metric from player efficiency rating to offensive box plus minus to defensive box plus minus to BPM, and well, I guess the only value that's lower is value over replacement player, but that's not even that much lower. It's lower by 0.1, has gone up. He's averaged the same points per game, has averaged a better field goal percentage, and the second best 3-point percentage of his career. In terms of rebounding, he averages almost 9 rebounds per game, so statistically speaking, he has been fantastic. The problem is, he doesn't necessarily seem like a man that is capable of winning a championship with a superstar player with just them two, meaning in order for Porzingis to succeed, I think he needs to fill the Kevin Love role or the Chris Bosh role on the Miami Heat or the Kevin Love role on the Cleveland Cavaliers on a championship team. And as a result, maybe the Mavericks would elect to keep him. But if things with him and Luka are as bad as it seems, which we made a decent amount of videos on it, then I think that if the Mavericks could get out of Porzingis' contract, which might be a little bit more difficult than you think, then they absolutely will. And of course, this video wouldn't be complete if we didn't bring up Ben Simmons. Now, Ben Simmons has been the top guy that we've been making videos about on a damn near daily basis. Every single day you hear a brand new report on Ben Simmons. Either the Timberwolves are interested in him. More recently, the Indiana Pacers offered Malcolm Brogdon for him, which was rejected by the Philadelphia 76ers. They said that they want at least an all-star caliber player in return for Ben Simmons. So we now know what the Philadelphia 76ers value is on Ben Simmons. I think that Ben Simmons is probably the most likely player to get traded on this entire list, not because he's bad or anything. It's just because Daryl Morey doesn't like his his type of player. Daryl Morey is very big on players that could at least shoot the three, and Ben Simmons could barely shoot a mid-range jumper. Sure, he has tremendous defensive versatility, and that's something that's very hard to find in today's NBA, but I feel like if the right deal comes along, and I'm sure a team is going to view Ben Simmons as a remarkable way to pivot into a quick rebuild, then I'm sure that Ben Simmons will get traded. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him get traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, possibly for Colin Sexton and Kevin Love, or I wouldn't be surprised if the OKC Thunder offered a decent amount of draft capital and maybe a salary cap filler in order to bring him along. It really depends on what Daryl Morey and the Philadelphia 76ers want in return for Ben Simmons. Speaking of the Cleveland Cavaliers, if there are two players that are potentially going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers, it would have to be Kevin Love and Colin Sexton. And the Cavaliers have been very open that they've been doing whatever it takes to move on from Kevin Love. And we've all been waiting for this trade. At least I've been calling this trade for about over a year now. Many of us are anticipating that Kevin Love eventually gets traded to the Portland Trail Blazers. His hometown is in Portland, Oregon, so he'd like to go back home, finish his career out there, and he gives the Portland Trail Blazers a much needed boost if he does so. Now, of course, Kevin Love's contract isn't the most beautiful contract, so chances are the Cleveland Cavaliers will have to attach either a player like Darius Garland or Colin Sexton in addition to him. Now, I really think it's shocking that the Cavaliers would be interested in just making Colin Sexton a add-on to any trade, so I'm a little bit skeptical about them being packaged together, but needless to say, I fully expect Kevin Love to be moved this offseason, most likely to Portland to try to keep Damian Lillard happy, possibly for CJ McCollum. Up next, we have Andrew Wiggins, who honestly is only on this list because, well, Andrew Wiggins is probably one of the best pieces that the Golden State Warriors have in order to make the salary cap work for any potential trade that involves James Wiseman or the number 7 pick in this year's NBA draft. The Golden State Warriors have been in rumors about almost any player that could potentially be traded. Whether that player is Bradley Beal or Pascal Siakam, the Warriors are motivated to use that number 7 overall pick and package it with Andrew Wiggins to get another star to maximize Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson's championship window, as that window is slowly beginning to shut. As a result, definitely expect Andrew Wiggins to be on the move this offseason should the Golden State Warriors decide to swing a trade for a big star player. And finally, we have Spicy P, Pascal Siakam. Now, of course, a Pascal Siakam to the Golden State Warriors trade has been discussed, and this trade did involve the number 7 overall pick in the NBA draft. The Golden State Warriors were okay with potentially giving up James Wiseman and giving up Andrew Wiggins so they can make the contracts work together. And the reason why the Toronto Raptors would elect to move on from Pascal Siakam is their championship window is over at this point. Kyle Lowry's probably going to leave this offseason. Yeah, they have Fred VanVleet, but at this point, they have to choose between being a middle of the pack type of team or a team that could potentially blow it all up and rebuild. And they're in a good position to do so, considering that they have the number 4 pick in the NBA draft this year. Now, of course, I don't think they're desperate to move on from Spicy P, but if the right offer was to come, I could imagine them moving on from Pascal Siakam. And those are every single player that I think is about to get traded this offseason. Now, we're going to come back to this and see who I hit on and who I miss on, but let me know in the comments section down below if there's anyone that I forgot to mention. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.